Of course, Mom and Dad would rather live with me than you, Emma. After all, I'm the one giving them grandkids, and you can even do that. We're moving in, so you and your husband should pack up and leave," said my pregnant sister-in-law, Karen, patting her belly confidently. I simply replied, "All right," which seemed to satisfy Karen, but deep down, I was relieved maybe this would finally cut ties between us. My name is Emma, and I've been married to Scott. We've been trying hard to have a baby, but it's been a struggle due to my infertility. Before I got married, I worked as a childcare worker and loved kids more than anything. So, when I learned that I might not be able to have children, it broke my heart. I even told Scott that I'd understand if he regretted marrying me and wanted a divorce. But Scott, being the kind and loving man he is, told me, "I didn't marry you just to have kids. I married you because I love you. Let's face this together." His words gave me the strength to start fertility treatments, and I often remind myself how lucky I am to have such a supportive husband. At first, I tried to balance my treatments with my job, but it became too overwhelming. The stress of shift work and seeing children every day made me emotional. I couldn't help but cry at the thought of not being able to have my own baby. Scott suggested I could stay home if it was too much, so I decided to quit my job and focus on the treatments. Scott's younger sister, Karen, knows about our situation. She has 4 children and is currently pregnant with her 5th. Being around pregnant women is already hard for me, but Karen doesn't seem to care. She often brings her 4 kids to our house and says things like, "You're a housewife now, right? You should take care of my kids for me. You used to work in childcare, so you're good at it." Then she'd leave her kids with me while she went out for spa treatments and manicures. When I tried to tell her I wasn't comfortable with this, Karen would dismiss me, saying, "In today's world, where people aren't having enough children, I'm the one doing something great by raising kids. Ew, who can't even have kids should just do as I say." It frustrated me to care for her kids for free, especially with her rude attitude. But what hurt the most was seeing how much her kids wanted their mom's attention. They needed her, not just someone to babysit them. When Karen's kids asked me, "When will Mom be back?" it always broke my heart to reply, "I'm not sure." I told Scott about how Karen was leaving her kids with me while she went off for beauty treatments. Scott was furious and called Karen to confront her, but Karen brushed it off, saying, "Emma loves kids, right? She used to be a childcare worker, so this should make her happy. It's not a big deal." Scott then spoke to Karen's husband, Rob, but Rob sided with her. He said, "Our kids enjoy being with Emma, and it really helps us. If Emma gets pregnant, we won't ask her to babysit anymore. But until then, please help us out. Karen is exhausted from raising kids, and since Emma is a housewife, she should pitch in." Scott told me I didn't have to put up with this anymore. He said if Karen ever came over, I could refuse to watch her kids, but whenever Karen brought them over, the kids would immediately run to the back room without even saying hello. Karen would just say, "Take care of them for today," and leave before I could protest. One day, Karen came into the house unexpectedly. Normally, she just dropped off the kids and left, so I was surprised when she asked, "When are you moving to the new house? Do you have the designs or anything?" Scott and I were building a new duplex to live with his parents. The house was nearly finished, and we were preparing to move in soon. Despite knowing about my struggles with infertility, my in-laws had always been kind and supportive. My mother-in-law once told me, "There are plenty of happy families without children," and her words had been a great comfort to me. Since my in-laws were getting older and starting to deal with aches and pains, we decided to live together so we could help them. That's why Scott decided to build a duplex. It was unusual for Karen to show any interest in the house, so I showed her some predicted images and blueprints. She seemed curious, asking about the number of rooms and how much sunlight the house would get. I reassured her that everything was well designed. Then Karen asked about our moving date. When I told her, she just said, "I see," and left, leaving her kids behind as usual. I had a bad feeling about this, but at the time, I didn't think too much of it. Eventually, we moved into the 2-family home. A few days later, Scott's parents moved in too, and we all started living together. Life with my in-laws was smooth and without any problems. I felt lucky to have such kind and understanding in-laws. One day, out of nowhere, Karen, Scott's sister, showed up with her 4 kids. She brought them inside the new house, didn't even glance at them, and said, "Emma, we need to talk." While my in-laws, who hadn't seen their grandchildren in a while, were busy trying to keep up with the noisy kids, Karen pulled me into the hallway. I felt uneasy, especially knowing my in-laws had been complaining about back pain recently. I worried if they could handle the kids. Then Karen dropped a bombshell. "Why don't you and Scott leave this house?" she said casually. I was stunned, completely caught off guard, but Karen didn't care and continued. "Mom and Dad would rather live with me. Their real daughter. You can't even give them a grandchild. We're moving in, so you guys should move out soon." She said this while patting her pregnant belly, sounding proud and entitled. I realized her plan was to live with her parents and have them take care of her kids. "Look how happy Dad and Mom are with their grandkids," she said, pointing at my in-laws, who were clearly struggling to manage the rowdy children. There was no joy on their faces, but Karen didn't care about the truth. Her mocking comment about my infertility hurt deeply, and her selfish attitude angered me even more. But I knew arguing wouldn't get through to her. After thinking about what I could do, I quietly said, "Okay, we'll move out." Karen seemed thrilled. She quickly set a date for us to move out and for her family to move in. Once again, she left her kids behind, but I felt a sense of relief. I thought this could be a chance to finally cut ties with Karen. Time passed, and the day came when Karen's family moved into the 2-family home Scott had built. As I wondered how they were settling in, my phone rang. It was Karen, and she was furious. "What the hell is this?" she shouted. "Why haven't you moved out all your stuff? There's no space for our things, and where are Dad and Mom supposed to stay?" Scott and I, along with his parents, had moved out of the house, but we hadn't taken all the furniture with us. Karen was furious and called me to complain. I calmly responded. The conversation was so sudden, so we only moved out for now. Your in-laws are staying with us. Karen snapped back, almost yelling, "This is outrageous. You and Scott moving into the house he built without consulting us is unacceptable. And it's ridiculous that you are leaving all the hard work of watching the kids to us while you go out and enjoy yourselves. This isn't fair." Ignoring her tantrum, Karen changed the topic. "Can I just throw out any of the furniture I don't like?" "Feel free," I said casually, "if you're really planning to move in. But are you sure about this?" "What do you mean by that?" Karen asked, clearly annoyed. I decided it was time to reveal my plan. "Can you and Rob handle the mortgage for that house? It's a 2-family home and very expensive." In reality, the house was fully paid off using the savings of Scott, his parents, and me. There was no mortgage, but I told Karen this lied to scare her off. Scott and his parents were in on the plan and supported it. When Karen demanded to speak to Scott, he played along, telling her the same story about the mortgage. Over the phone, Karen started crying. She admitted that she and Rob couldn't afford the payments. Scott reassured her that she could back out and return to her old house, saying we would also be returning soon. Defeated, Karen and her family moved back to their home. When we returned from our vacation at Yellowstone National Park, Karen stormed into the house in a rage. "Why didn't you tell us there was still a mortgage? Why would you hide that from us?" I shrugged and replied casually, "Because you never asked." Her face turned bright red with anger. "The kids were so excited, thinking this house would be ours. You've crushed their hopes. That's why you can have kids. You're selfish. The least you can do is take proper care of mine. It's not even that hard to play with them. Better than doing nothing." That's when my normally quiet and gentle mother-in-law stood up. To everyone's shock, she slapped Karen across the face. Karen frowned, stunned, as my mother-in-law glared at her and spoke firmly. "You have no right to dump your responsibilities onto Emma or insult her like this. You can't even handle the no big deal task of playing with your own kids, so don't you dare criticize her." Karen was left speechless, and the room fell into silence. You plan to move into this duplex just to dump your child care responsibilities on us, didn't you? My mother-in-law said firmly. I was willing to help if you were genuinely struggling as a mother raising children alone. But who would want to assist a daughter who offloads her duties onto others and acts so entitled? Leave this house immediately and don't come back. Karen, half crying, pleaded. Aren't you on my side? Ma'am, I'm your real daughter, aren't I? My usually quiet father-in-law finally spoke up, his tone full of disappointment. It's because you're our real daughter that your behavior is so shameful. I feel guilty for raising someone so selfish. I've heard from Scott about how you've been mocking Emma for her difficulties having a child. That's something no decent person should ever do. Karen turned to glare at me with pure hatred, but I could only feel a touch of pity for her. She seemed so lost and desperate. Calmly, I opened the front door and said, as both your mother and father have made clear, please leave. I won't help you with your children anymore. So do your best on your own. You're all monsters, Karen screamed as she stormed out in tears. She never set foot in our home again. Later, Scott got a call from her while he was at work. She was sobbing uncontrollably, and it was hard for him to make sense of what she was saying. But from what he could gather, Karen and Rob were in serious financial trouble. Karen had been spending excessively on beauty treatments and manicures, while Rob wasted money on lottery tickets. They had depleted their savings and were struggling to make ends meet. Karen had seen moving into the duplex as her way of saving on rent and utilities by taking over the home Scott had built with his parents. Her plan had failed, and she was left to face the consequences of her and Rob's reckless decisions. When Karen asked Scott for financial help, he refused. He couldn't forgive her for mocking my struggles with infertility. Instead, he told her that all she needed to do was cut back on beauty treatments and lottery tickets. But Karen cried, saying she didn't want to. Scott couldn't justify helping someone so arrogant, even if she was his sister. Eventually, Rob ran out of money for lottery tickets and had to take his second job to make ends meet. Karen, too, had to stop spending on beauty treatments. She used to look so well-groomed, but a few months after our falling out, when we unexpectedly bumped into her, she was almost unrecognizable. It was Scott who had to point her out to me, saying, "Isn't that Karen?" before I realized it was her. Still, her children seemed lively and happy around her, which was a relief to see. Then came the miracle. I found out I was pregnant with twins. I couldn't stop crying when the doctor told me the news. Svat, who was with me, also cried tears of joy, and we shared the moment together. My in-laws were thrilled that we were finally going to have the children we'd always dreamed of. Though I haven't mentioned it to Scott, I secretly think that being free from the stress Karen brought into our lives helped me get pregnant. I feel nothing but gratitude towards Scott and my in-laws for standing by me instead of Karen. Now, as I await the arrival of our twins, I pray from the bottom of my heart that they will be born healthy. These two lives feel like a true blessing.